thank you for agreeing to do this.
Well, it's nice to be here. Well, in a way, it's not really, because Arthur isn't around anymore. But the film would have happened anyway.
Do you remember where you were when you learned that he passed away?
Yes, I was in an airport. I was in, I think, Heathrow, and the news trickled through, and it was very dazing, because I just thought, here are the dolls coming back again in a fantastic way, and it would just seem to be part of their just constant bad luck. That was the first thing I thought of. I mean, it was just absolutely terrible, and I just thought it was so sad, because seemed to be so much ahead for them. And I just thought, well, this must be the most unluckiest group in the entire history of the world. Every time something's going to happen for them, something good, some tragedy occurs.
Do you think, and you may have already answered this, but is it a blessing or a tragedy that Arthur passed away when he did?
Well, I think, and this might sound very hard, but in a way it's a blessing. In a strange way, it's a blessing, because I don't think he was a terribly happy person, and I think he'd lived for years in complete turmoil. And the final few weeks of his life had been fantastic, but the previous 30 years had been extreme limbo. And there was so much pain in his eyes, and I don't think he really enjoyed his life. So we must assume that perhaps he's happier now.
He told me that he learned by an email from a friend and then a couple of fans that his band was going to be reuniting.
Yes.
He called an old number that he had for you that he wasn't even sure was going to work. Do you remember that conversation? Can you remember?
Well, a bit before that, I had actually known Arthur, because he lived very nearby me on a road called Larrabee, and I had heard maybe 6 or 7 years ago around town that he was trying to locate me. But I never really trusted the people who were telling me, and I never had a phone number for him. But we did meet eventually a few times, and he was very, very sad and very, very embittered about the way his life had turned out. He had never earned money from the dolls, and the dolls had always been completely rejected by the mainstream. Yet anybody who remotely imitated the dolls were having millions of dollars thrown at them, and Arthur had never earned anything at all. So I think that was very difficult for him to live with, and rightly so.
Some people who will see this film will find it hard to believe that a band, and we sort of tell their story, and there's a number of artists who come and name them as an influence and how important they were. Why is it that so few people have heard of them?
Well, I think all the right people have, and all the people who have heard of them and really given them time and listened to them absolutely love them and feel very passionately about them. And they only made 2 studio albums, and for a group who did so little really and existed for such a short amount of time, their impact has been extraordinary. But because they were connected with drugs and absurdly transgender issues, which at the time, you have to remember, it was a long time ago, and all of that kind of thing was really taboo. And if a man walked down the street wearing women's clothes, he could be arrested and thrown into jail. It isn't like that now, but I think people never forgot the dolls, and they influenced so many people, and unfortunately they were ahead of their time. And also, unfortunately, I don't think anybody on a personal level, record companies, managers, whoever, cared about them and looked after them.
How do you explain that?
Well, I think it's a common story. I don't think musicians are protected, really.
But some of them make a considerable amount more money than they did.
Yeah, they do. Most people do.
Why not the dolls?
Because they were extremely unfortunate, very, very unfortunate, and they were ahead of their time. and that's the price you have to pay. And then, of course, all those dreadful American hair bands who came along in the 80s, who had no originality, had nothing to offer, and would instantly sell 20 million. So for people like Arthur, it was baffling, absolutely baffling. But often, I think people can't take the real thing. They can't take reality, and they would much rather have something that is less real.
Hearing you put it like that, I'm imagining how difficult that must have been for Arthur to be watching MTV or reading magazines in the 80s when he had nothing, and all of these bands who were influenced by him,
yes,
minus the originality, are cashing in.
Yes, but it does happen to lots of people, I think. But the Dolls are a perfect example of how a group can be shortchanged just by not bad timing, because when they were around they were so precious, but the world wasn't ready. It seems to take the pop world 30 years to understand anybody, to really understand a group or an artist. And often it takes deaths within the group, and then people say, ah yes, we do like those people now that they're not here. But the majority opinion where pop music is concerned is always silly and always wrong and always very, very slow. So it just takes a hell of a long time.
Do you remember where you were when you first saw the Dolls, first encountered them?
Yes, I had gone to see them. I had gone to see them live in '72, but their drummer had died 3 days earlier, and so even though I was on the front row and it hadn't been announced, this is, of course, is pre-internet days when news travelled very, very slowly, and everybody was expecting the Dolls to walk on the stage, and of course they didn't. There was just suddenly an announcement that Billy had died, and everybody just collapsed. And then the next encounter was television, and they appeared very famously on the Old Grey Whistle Test, which in those very dark days of '73 was a fantastic vision. And people, once again, people forget how absolutely dank things were, how dank life was and pop art was. And there was no sense of danger within pop music at all. So here were boys who were calling themselves dolls, and they looked like prostitutes, male prostitutes, and it was extraordinary. And the music, because it was such fantastic pop music, it just seemed to me like the absolute answer to everything. But of course, too dangerous.
Who died in that band, and when?
Well, the first person who died was Billy Mercier, and that was in 1972. He died in London. And since then, the replacement drummer, Jerry Nolan, has died. Johnny Thunders obviously has died. And now Arthur has gone. So there's only David and Sylvain from the original lineup who remain, which is extraordinary. I mean, this is a blighted band. It really is, absolutely blighted. I'd almost say cursed, because if you listen to the music they made, every single song is really a hit single, and there's no reason on earth why it shouldn't have happened. But for some strange reason, this group has always been cursed.
Arthur told me that you believed if there was ever going to be a hit single from the band, he felt that, or he got the impression that you thought Trash was their best.
Yes.
Why Trash?
Well, because I think it summed them up completely. It was so immediate, and it was so it was just completely chock-a-block with every conceivable hook, and such a fantastic splurge of youth and energy, and has never, for an hour, for a second, for a minute, it has never dated. And that's the test of fantastic music. I mean, obviously we still listen to classical music from 7 million years ago, and I think the same thing will happen with pop music. The best of it will be timeless forever. And the New York Dolls are absolutely a part of that.